The anticipation is building as the Dallas Cowboys and the Las Vegas Raiders prepare for a high-stakes Week 11 showdown, a matchup wrapped in tension, urgency, and the kind of raw football energy that defines the NFL season at its midpoint. And as we dive deep into every angle of this clash, we begin with the storylines that have reshaped both teams over the past few weeks. Because this isn't just a game between two iconic franchises, it's a collision of narratives, pressure, and desperate playoff hopes, and fans on both sides know that this matchup could shift the entire tone of the season for better or for worse as the Cowboys attempt to bounce back from an inconsistent stretch while the Raiders fight to prove that their early season spark wasn't a temporary burst but something that can carry them deeper into the year. And as we break down what to expect on Sunday, you'll see why this is one of the most unpredictable Week 11 battles on the schedule, with the spotlight squarely aimed at both locker rooms, both coaching staffs, and several key players whose availability could completely change the outcome. The Cowboys enter this week knowing that pressure has mounted significantly, and fans who have followed the team closely understand that the offense has shown flashes of brilliance that can disappear without warning, so there's a growing expectation that Dak Prescott must step into this game locked in, decisive, and ready to match the physicality that the Raiders' defensive front brings every single snap. But the Cowboys' concerns extend beyond Prescott as the running game has struggled to prove a consistent backbone, and the offensive line has been battling through rotations and injuries that have prevented them from establishing the rhythm and dominance usually associated with Dallas football. And as the Raiders prepare to deploy an aggressive defensive scheme that has been surprisingly effective against top quarterbacks, the Cowboys know that playing from behind or relying solely on the passing game could put them in a dangerous early game hole, something they've struggled to recover from this season, making early drives extremely important in determining how freely Dallas can execute their game plan. Across the field, the Raiders enter this game riding a wave of gritty performances led by a roster that has refused to surrender to adversity. And even though Las Vegas has dealt with their share of inconsistency, they continue to display the kind of resilience that makes them a dangerous opponent. Because the Raiders may not have the cleanest offensive identity, but what they do possess is a combination of explosiveness and unpredictability, and that combination can be lethal against the Cowboys. The defense that has occasionally struggled to contain mobile quarterbacks, deep threat receivers, and misdirection-heavy play designs, which the Raiders have used more frequently in recent weeks as their offensive coordinator leans into the strengths of his personnel. But the biggest storyline for Las Vegas revolves around their ability to protect the football, avoid costly third-down mistakes, and prevent Dallas from flipping field position early, because if the Raiders can dictate pace and force Cowboys' defense into long, grinding drives, they significantly increase their chances of controlling this game going into the second half. Much of the Cowboys' defensive success hinges on the condition of their secondary and the health of key starters, and the biggest name that all eyes are on this week is Donovan Wilson, whose physicality, downhill tackling, and ability to disrupt plays in the box have made him one of the most essential pieces of the Dallas defense, especially on early downs and blitz packages. And Wilson's injury status has been a major talking point because the Cowboys rely heavily on his ability to close gaps. Eli hits that change momentum and provide a stabilizing presence that brings out the best in the safeties and linebackers around him. So if Wilson is limited or ruled out, it forces Dallas to reshuffle their defensive responsibilities in a way that could give the Raiders an immediate advantage in play-action situations, misdirection plays, and red zone matchups. Because replacing Wilson's unique mix of instincts and aggression isn't as simple as plugging in the next man up, and that's the type of defensive vulnerability that clever offensive coordinators notice and exploit. On the Raiders' side of the injury conversation, the focus has narrowed in on Logan Wilson, the defensive leader whose sideline-to-sideline presence and ability to diagnose plays almost instantly has been instrumental in keeping Las Vegas competitive in games where their offense scored inconsistently. And Logan Wilson is the kind of linebacker who changes the geometry of a defense because his anticipation allows him to shut down screens, disrupt passing lanes, and clamp down on running backs. BF. Or they can explode through holes, so whether he's fully available dramatically affects how the Raiders will scheme their coverage against Prescott and Tony Pollard, because without Wilson anchoring the middle, the Cowboys could find more room for short and intermediate plays that open up the rest of the field. And the Raiders coaching staff understands this, which is why Logan Wilson's rehab and status updates have been monitored with intense focus, knowing that his presence could easily swing a handful of drives and possibly the entire game. As both teams shape their strategies around the potential availability of these two defensive playmakers, the coaching chess match becomes even more intriguing because the Cowboys need to use pace, motion, and formation shifts to keep the Raiders guessing, while Las Vegas must rely on smart defensive disguises and the ability to win in the trenches if they want to disrupt Prescott's timing. And momentum will play a huge role, as it often does in Dallas games, because once the Cowboys get hot, they tend to snowball quickly, turning one successful drive into a wave of confidence that fuels both sides of the ball. But if the Raiders can withstand that early surge and instead force Dallas to become one-dimensional or overly aggressive, they can push the Cowboys into the type of mistakes that have haunted them in recent crucial games, especially turnovers in the middle of the field and stalled drives caused by penalties. As this matchup unfolds on paper, it becomes clear that both teams have a legitimate path to victory, but also glaring pitfalls that could derail their performance, because the Cowboys need discipline, consistent execution, and defensive stability in the absence of full health, while the Raiders need composure, creative play calling, and strong leadership on defense to contain the Cowboys' firepower. And with both franchises entering Week 11 knowing the pressure is rising fast, the energy surrounding this game feels electric and unstable in the best possible way, because this isn't just another week of football, it's a test of identity for both sides as the Cowboys try to assert themselves as postseason contenders and the Raiders attempt to prove that their resilience isn't temporary but a permanent part of their team's DNA. When all factors are considered, this game has the potential to turn into a fourth-quarter thriller defined by turnovers, momentum shifts, and one or two players stepping up when their teams need them most. And the prediction leans cautiously toward a Cowboys win by a narrow margin because their overall talent, offensive potential, and defensive explosiveness give them a slight edge if their key pieces are healthy enough to contribute. But make no mistake, the Raiders are fully capable of walking into this matchup, absorbing the pressure, and delivering a shocking upset if Dallas starts slow or makes critical mistakes. And that uncertainty is exactly what makes this Week 11 showdown one of the most compelling matchups on the schedule, as both teams look to define their seasons in a game packed with intensity, emotion, and playoff implications.